She called the cops and screamed, "Arrest him!" But those weren't cops. Men in cheap uniforms kicked my gate before sunrise, holding a laminated HOA badge and smiling like they owned the street. "You need to turn over the firearms," the taller one barked, like he'd rehearsed it 100 times. I stood in my doorway holding a mug, calm because calm buys seconds. And seconds were all I needed. My neighbor's face went white. Karen stood behind them, satisfied, waving a stapled notice like a scepter. I let them step onto my porch. Then I tapped my phone and the porch light blinked red. The cameras I'd put up last month weren't for decoration. The leader froze when the lens caught his reflection. "Who sent you?" I asked quietly. He stammered something about HOA enforcement and safety. Karen laughed. "We can take those!" And then she met my eyes and the laugh died. I don't wear my jacket for fashion. I used to run operations where men pretended authority to steal more than guns. I let one of those memories slide across my tongue like a warning. You don't seize what I earned. The fake badge trembled in his hand. Somewhere down the road, a real patrol car's lights blinked, but not because of them. The first twist hit. The men weren't official, and the footage was already streaming live to an attorney I'd called 2 minutes earlier. Karen's smile cracked. The so-called officers stiffened when they saw the real squad car creeping up the street. Their cheap badges suddenly looked like toy props under the flashing red and blue. Karen rushed forward, her voice screeching, "They're with me! This man is dangerous! He's stockpiling weapons!" She pointed at my house like she'd uncovered a terrorist cell. The taller fake cop shoved a clipboard into my chest, shouting, "Sign this surrender order or we'll drag you out." I didn't flinch. Instead, I stepped off the porch slowly, hands visible, calm as a Sunday morning. My neighbors peeked through blinds, recording everything. "Funny thing about orders," I said, lowering my voice so only the imposters could hear, "I used to give them to real soldiers. And the protocol for fraud—" I let the pause hang heavy. The real officer stepped out of his cruiser, hand on his holster. "What's going on here?" he asked. Karen snapped back. "Arrest him! He's threatening HOA property!" But my phone buzzed. The live stream was still rolling. Dozens of comments poured in. "That's not law enforcement. Those uniforms are fake." I raised the clipboard high so the real cop could see. "Sir, does this look like a government document to you?" He frowned, shaking his head. The imposters tried to backpedal, but Karen shoved them forward, yelling, "Do your job!" That's when I flipped the switch, literally. My security system's shutters rolled down behind me with a metallic snap. I had just locked my entire house like a fortress. The imposters realized too late they were now trapped on my property with nowhere to run. The taller fake cop's hand twitched toward his belt like he might pull a weapon, but I tilted my head, calm as ever. "Careful," I said, voice low but sharp. "Protocol says I neutralize threats before they move." He froze, sweat breaking across his forehead. The shorter one whispered, "Man, this isn't worth it." But Karen shoved him forward again, her face twisted with rage. The real officer circled closer, eyes narrowing at the fake uniforms. "IDs, now," he ordered. They fumbled, pulling out flimsy cards that wouldn't pass at a mall security checkpoint. The cop's lip curled. "These aren't law enforcement credentials. Who the hell are you?" Karen jumped in, desperate. "They're authorized by the HOA board. We have rights over his property. He's hiding weapons in there." Her shrill voice echoed down the street, but I just let the silence breathe before dropping the line that cut through everything. "You want my guns?" I said, stepping forward, my voice carrying to every neighbor watching from behind their curtains. "I trained half this county's deputies how to handle firearms. You're not seizing anything from me." The imposters looked like they'd been slapped. The real officer's brows shot up, recognition flickered in his eyes. He knew my name now. He knew my record. Karen, though, doubled down. "Then arrest him! He's threatening me!" I smiled, slow and steady, and raised my phone toward her. On the live stream, the comments were exploding. "She's finished! That's impersonation of law enforcement! Arrest her too!" And then the real officer's radio crackled. Backup was already on the way. She didn't expect backup to be mine. My wife pulled up in her unmarked SUV like she belonged to every radio call in the county, stepped out, and showed a badge that made Karen go pale. Federal, she said. 2 words that shut Karen's mouth faster than any argument. While Karen scrambled for words, my phone pinged. The live stream had just switched to the backyard mic I'd planted. Karen's voice saying, plain as day, "Pay them to scare off, I don't care how we do it," and then laughter. The imposters looked like paper in a storm. The real officer moved in, reading the charges aloud. Impersonation, trespass, filing false reports. Neighbors started clapping. Someone yelled, "You lied to all of us!" Karen tried to push forward, but my wife stepped between us and said, "Back off, ma'am. You're under investigation." I felt the air change. The town didn't see her coming, and neither did Karen. I lifted my phone so the camera caught Karen's face as she realized the game was over, and I said loud enough for everyone to hear, "You can fake a badge, but you can't fake a conscience." The handcuffs clicked. The next twist was already forming in the comments. Someone tagged the county recorder, and a title search was about to drop a surprise nobody saw coming.
The county records hit the feed faster than Karen could scream. A neighbor shouted from across the street, phone in hand, "Hey, this land, it's not even in the HOA!" Gasps spread through the crowd. The live stream zoomed in on the digital deed, my name locked in bold print. Karen's jaw dropped, her whole plan collapsing in public. She lunged toward the officer, screaming, "That's fake! He forged it!" But the deputy shook his head. "These files came direct from the county office. Ma'am, you've been trespassing and harassing a lawful property owner." The imposters panicked, tried bolting for their van, but my shutters were still down, gates locked tight. They rattled the latch like caged animals while the real backup cruisers finally rolled in, boxing them in. Red and blue painted the whole street, and the neighbors cheered like it was the 4th of July. Karen spun on me, pointing a shaking finger. You can't stay here. We'll vote you out." I stepped forward, voice steady, letting every word cut. "I fought overseas so people like you couldn't bully their way into power. You don't get a vote on my freedom." The officer nodded at me, then turned to Karen. "You're done." And as he read her rights, the imposters were cuffed one by one. But the twist wasn't over. From the back of the crowd, an older man stepped forward. Gray suit, polished shoes, voice carrying authority. "I'm the actual HOA president," he announced, glaring at Karen, "and I never sent these men." The crowd fell silent, waiting for the next bomb to drop. The real HOA president held up a folder thick with papers. "Karen forged board letters, stole HOA funds, and hired these clowns with community money," he said, his voice sharp enough to cut steel. Neighbors gasped. Phones went higher, recording every second. Karen's face turned the color of chalk. "He's lying!" she screeched. But the documents told a different story. Receipts, fake invoices, her signature right on top. The officer passed the folder to my wife, who flipped through with that calm federal stare. Wire fraud, misuse of funds, conspiracy, she counted off like a grocery list. Karen staggered back, wild-eyed, trying to find an escape. "No, you don't understand! I am the HOA!" she shouted, voice cracking. That's when her own allies stepped forward, 2 board members who had been silent until now. "Not anymore," one said coldly. "We were scared of you, but this is criminal." The neighbors erupted, chanting for her arrest. Karen's knees buckled as the cuffs clicked tighter, and the imposters were shoved into squad cars. For a moment, the street was filled with nothing but flashing lights and angry voices. I looked around at the neighbors who once kept their blinds closed, now standing shoulder to shoulder with me. "I fought overseas so people like you couldn't bully their way into power. You don't get a vote on my freedom." The cheers rolled like thunder. But even as Karen was shoved into the back of the cruiser, I caught the HOA president's eyes. He looked uneasy, almost too uneasy, and then he said, just loud enough for me to hear, "You think she was the problem? Son, this goes way higher than Karen.
The words hit harder than the flashing lights. Higher than Karen? I repeated, narrowing my eyes. The HOA president didn't flinch. He slid a sealed envelope into my hand, then stepped back like he wanted no part of what came next. The real cop didn't notice, too busy loading the imposters into cruisers. I slipped the envelope into my jacket, but Karen saw it before the door slammed shut. She went feral, thrashing against the cuffs, screaming, "Don't let him open that! He doesn't know what he's holding!" The cruiser door slammed, cutting her off, but her panic lingered in the air. My wife leaned closer. "What's in it?" she whispered. I shook my head. "Not here." I could feel every neighbor's eyes on me, waiting, curious, hungry for more drama. Instead, I raised my phone one last time and spoke into the live stream. Tonight proved something simple. Freedom isn't granted by boards, notices, or fake cops. It's earned and it's defended. The comments exploded, hearts and flags flooding the screen. The cruisers rolled away, taking Karen and her goons with them, the crowd chanting as if justice was a parade. But the HOA president had already vanished into the shadows, leaving me with the envelope, heavy in my pocket. When I finally tore it open inside my locked house, my blood ran cold. Inside wasn't money or paperwork. It was a roster. Pages of names, addresses, and check marks. Government officials, contractors, even cops. All tied to one thing: a network using fake HOAs to seize property and weapons. And scribbled at the bottom, in Karen's handwriting, Phase 2 begins next week. I sat at my kitchen table, the roster spread across the wood, the words blurring as my pulse hammered. Phase 2 begins next week? My wife read it over my shoulder, her jaw tightening. "This isn't just Karen, this is organized," she said, her badge gleaming under the kitchen light. Before I could answer, my security system beeped, a motion alert at the back fence. I pulled up the feed. 2 figures in dark suits, not the sloppy imposters from before. These men moved like they'd been trained. One whispered into an earpiece, the other scanned my yard with a small device that glowed green every few seconds. "They're sweeping for signals," my wife muttered. "They know we have evidence." She reached for her sidearm, calm but sharp. I killed the lights, pulled the roster into a fireproof case, and whispered, "Protocol Delta." She looked at me surprised, then nodded. Delta wasn't for show. It was the procedure we drilled overseas when a base was about to be overrun. I tapped my phone, sending the entire roster to 3 people I trusted: my attorney, my old commanding officer, and a senator who owed me his life. Within seconds, encrypted uploads were gone, untouchable. The men outside circled closer, pausing at my shed. One tried the lock. I whispered, "They're not HOA. They're federal contractors." My wife's eyes hardened, and Karen was just their cover. Then one of the men looked straight into the camera, straight at me, and smiled. And in that instant, I knew this wasn't the end of Karen's downfall. This was the beginning of war.